Now, you may recall a couple of years ago, there was a lot of conversation about housing changes, needing to make changes. And one of the pieces of legislation that we spent a lot of time discussing on this show has been greater density in our communities. In this case, 4 units on a single-family lot, up to 6 units on a single-family lot. Well, Burnaby's experiment with multiplex housing is hitting a wall. And after months of backlash over what residents call gigantic and out-of-place homes, Council has voted to scale back the rules, cutting heights, shrinking floor space, and adding parking. Well, joining us now to talk about this issue is Kathy Corrigan, who is a longtime Burnaby resident and the former BC NDP MLA for that community as well. Kathy Corrigan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jas.
So let's start right from the beginning.
Sure.
The changes brought in by the present NDP government.
Yeah.
When did you start seeing changes in and around where you live?
Probably not for close to a year, because what the legislation in December of 2023 said was that municipalities had to change their bylaws to comply with the requirement that you allow 4 to 6 units on a lot, what used to be single-family lots, that had to be done by June of 2024. So it wasn't completed, I don't think, by many municipalities until June of 2024. And then, of course, the applications started to come in from the developers. And in Burnaby, they came in like crazy, because what Burnaby did was instead of just saying, okay, we're going to have 4 units, 4 smaller units, Burnaby took a sledgehammer to our single-family neighborhoods by essentially tripling the amount of square footage that you could have a lot compared to what used to be. So it used to be that, on a single-family lot, a normal one, you could have maybe 4,000 square feet of house or a house in a laneway, but that kind of range. And what they did was they said that you could have on say a 60 by 100 foot lot, you could suddenly have over 12,000 square feet. No other municipality in the Lower Mainland did that. Burnaby didn't have to do it, but they made the decision to do it. So now Burnaby has these massive houses going up. There is a great rush to build these houses, and it's all because they made the decision that they were going to increase the square footage, the height, up to 4 stories on a single family lot coverage, so that there's no grass, the trees have all been cut down, all because they made the decision, without being forced to, not having to, they made the decision to allow these massive houses, and it's just, it's just not good planning. It's not good planning.
Well, have you seen any of them that have been built? Can you describe what they look like?
Oh, my God, they're all over the place, because Burnaby basically let the builders do whatever they want. And the developer said that to somebody who's next to one of them. They said, we can do whatever we want. Burnaby has just let us go do whatever we want. And the result, yes, they're all over the place in Burnaby. And they are these massive houses that go up to 4 stories, basically cover the whole lot, with a huge house in the front, a huge house in the back, creating parking chaos.
Is there parking?
Eliminating light, often eliminating views, denuding my area, which is a tree-lined streets, denuding lots of trees, because apparently Burnaby must have gotten rid of their rules about trees, because they're completely gone. And for the future, causing great tax increases. I'm really concerned, because this present council, drained the more than $1 billion of reserves that previous council had built up, and that is all gone, and because of a bunch of projects that made no sense. And now we have, looming tax bills because of all the infrastructure, Jas, that you have to build. And you know about this, having been in the legislature, things like schools and parks and all the pipes under the ground. We had a house built behind us, just when it was in transition, a house with a lane house. And it's actually, in retrospect, it's not looking as bad as some of them. But they had to tear up the whole lane and build new pipes because they had this massive new house coming in. Who's going to pay for that?
Was there any parking?
Are.
Kathy, when you're talking about some of these 4-story homes, is there any parking available? Is it all street parking?
Part of the legislation, the legislation in the areas that were close to bus stops, the provincial legislation said you're not allowed to require parking. So I have a neighbor who lives right in my neighborhood in the middle of, like, it's just a quiet street, but she's 400 meters from a bus stop that is frequent service. So somebody can come and build a sixplex on her place, and they're not allowed to, nobody can require them to have parking. To get to that bus stop, she has to walk more than a kilometer because she has to go the other way. I mean, it's just the problem with the province is that the province has not got a history of planning. They have honestly no idea about planning. So they took the sledgehammer and used that, whacked our neighborhoods a few times. And then the city came in and piled on and added way more density than they had to. But yeah, they are just shocking. They're shocking. You have to drive through Burnaby. They're double the size of what, or even more than what any other municipalities have put in their bylaws, and other municipalities are pushing back. Burnaby has done virtually none of that. So now the result was there was a public hearing. Finally, there had been no consultation about these changes. They could have had a public hearing, but they decided not to. So finally, they were required to have a public hearing on their new official community plan that is coming in, and the community turned out in the hundreds with universal condemnation. There was a couple of developers that spoke in favor, but universal condemnation of the horrible changes and the loss of character in our neighborhoods. I know that there is, people are saying that, that's NIMBYism. Well, nobody would want these in their backyard, and there's lots of people that I know that, and you can drive around, where they feel like their neighborhood has been wrecked. But, it's not NIMBYism to want to have good planning and good process, and that is the thing that is completely missing.
So my understanding, Burnaby has now cut heights to 3 stories and is shrinking floor space by about 60%. Is that enough to restore balance in your mind?
Sorry, finish there.
They said they want to shrink floor space by about 60%. So is that enough to restore balance if they're cutting it from down to 3 stories?
See, the problem is people don't trust them. They've made so many bad decisions, and doing this without any kind of public consultation in the first place have people very mistrustful of what they're doing, and I don't think they're going to have a public hearing. They passed the changes last week. Whether they're going to have a public hearing on the changes, I don't know. There's a engineer planner who's taken a look at it, and he doesn't think that the numbers add up, and it's nibbling away at it. But people have lost their trust because of how high-handed and they were, and the lack of consultation in the first place.
I'm curious. Now, the mayor, to my understanding, is that he's trying to meet provincial mandates while trying to keep neighborhood character. Do you buy that explanation?
No, they didn't have to do it in the first place. The province made no requirement that they have increases in density. The province, the legislation, only said that where you have single-family or duplex neighborhoods, that you are required to allow 4-plexes or 6-plexes, depending on where it was, 4 to 6 plexes on those lots. This was all Burnaby's own doing, and I find it revisionist history for them to be saying now, we're just trying to comply with the provincial legislation. They went way beyond anything that the provincial legislation required, and in fact, last week passed a new official community plan that is going to impose even more density.
Now, you, Kathy, what advice would you give citizens in other municipalities if they're listening throughout Metro Vancouver, all the way up to Whistler, Southern Vancouver Island? There's a lot of people who've called this show over the last couple of years in regards to the 4 and 6 plexes on a single family lot. What advice would you give those residents who are also concerned?
Well, I think it depends on the municipality. I think it depends on the council that you have. I wouldn't presume to give advice, but I guess the one thing I would say is that if people are concerned, then they should be getting together and speaking up, because that's what happened in Burnaby, and it did make a difference. I have absolutely no doubt nothing would have been done if we hadn't had, just really organically, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people going to City Hall, getting together, forming community groups, and saying what is going on here. And it all could have been avoided if the city of Burnaby had been open and transparent in the first place and had public hearings.
Do you like the policy of fourplexes on a single family lot? If the consultation is there with local residents, rather than, as you say, 12,000 square foot property or 12,000 square feet of build on what is essentially a 6,000 square foot lot?
You know, it's hard to give an easy answer because planning isn't easy; it's complicated. Mm-hmm. I think that what should have happened is that the province should have consulted in the first place. Zoning is not their thing. They don't understand the communities. So that shouldn't have happened. On the other hand, I think there is a place we need to have densification. I think everybody agrees with that, but it has to be done carefully and thoughtfully. So could you have fourplexes? Absolutely, and I think that really was the intention of the provincial government. Originally. So I think it's possible to have fourplexes. Do I think they should have taken over zoning and planning, which is not their bailiwick and is a huge overreach? No, I don't think they should have. But I think the solutions certainly include lots of options, especially for young families, to be able to buy a place. Nobody can buy the places that are being built in Burnaby. They're putting up such huge places that these places are costing. I've been looking at the real estate listings, and they're like $1.7, $1.8 million for each of a fourplex. So the only people that are happy are the people who are developing the properties. They're buying a property for, a couple of $1 million or a little bit, $1.8 million, building 4 huge places and then selling them or trying to sell them for, $1.8 million each. Wow. That's not affordable.
Kathy, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks very much, Jas. Good to talk to you.
All right, that is Kathy Corrigan, Burnaby resident and former BC NDP MLA. You know, you kind of messed up when a former BC NDP MLA is complaining about that policy. But as Kathy said, the city council should have done a much better job in consulting with local residents there. Call me on the open line. I want to hear from you. What are you seeing in your community? You still like the idea of greater density to get more families in single-family neighborhoods, or do you think that entire piece of legislation has to be rethought? 604-280-9898. That's 604-280-9898, star 9898 on your cell phone. Let's go to Katie in Burnaby. Hi, Katie.
Hi there. Good afternoon. I am supportive of, I heard Kathy's interview, and I am supportive of that position. I just wanted to mention, in the past, I'd been a member of a Royal Oak Community Planning Committee. And it took us over a year to get to a point of a robust community plan. We worked with residents, businesses, considered and city guidance, and it was well thought out. The city did, through supposedly a lottery, select 40 residents to represent our almost 300,000 citizens, and it was a very short-lived community representation. It was 0.01%, didn't really have a lot of visibility, and they essentially supported what the city council slammed through. There should have been much broader community engagement, much, much broader.
Katie, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Good points there. You're absolutely right. I mean, you can't rush this stuff through. I know the provincial government introduced it, but you can't rush it through. And as Katie and Kathy Corrigan said, it did not meet the standards of what residents wanted. Let's go to Tim in, is it Schwartz Bay? Or no, he's a South Burnaby resident. Hi, Tim.
Yes, hi. Yeah, I mean, actually Schwartz Bay, but I'm a resident of South Burnaby.
Okay. What's on your mind?
Yes, well, I listened to Kathy Corrigan's interview, and I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with her. The city of Burnaby has totally kind of, pushed its mandate to the extreme and gone way beyond provincial legislation. What they've done is completely outrageous, in my view. I've reviewed their bylaws in pointed detail, and quite honestly, they're doing a little bit of a climb down right now. But as far as I'm concerned, it's like akin to putting lipstick on a pig. Quite honestly, they just screwed up royally. Quite honestly, without proper consultation with the public, and we had a bit of a mess on our hands. Mm-hmm. And I totally agree that Bill 44 and Bill 47, introduced by the provincial government, is definitely an overreach. But what Burnaby has done is just just created a situation which is immeasurably worse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, there is a need for obviously appropriate housing, but what we have in our hands now is just, as Kathy Corrigan pointed out, is not suitable. Some of these units are 2,400 square feet. They're coming in at 1.7 million or something like that. These are just not affordable units for people.
Tim, thank you for your call. Appreciate it. We've run out of time. My sincere apologies, folks. I know we could probably talk about another hour of this on this topic alone.